Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sugar Mama's Fireplay. I am your host, financial planner, Canna Campbell, and today we have another empowering, exciting story about financial change, where this couple have managed to create a 7-figure investment portfolio where financial freedom and independence is truly theirs. Now, on that note of change, there's something really important I need to talk to you about. When I launched Sugar Mama TV 10 years ago, which originated from my YouTube channel, which is still going today, I really wanted to create change in your life, obviously positive change in your life around money. And I feel that one of the best ways to create that change is to show you what it looks like, show you what it feels like, and then, of course, allow you to be inspired by all the positive flow-on effects and benefits that come from stepping up and taking control of your life. And even if it just means taking and making a few little adjustments in your life. So please know that as I share my stories, Monica's stories with you, it's really to show you and to empower you and inspire you to have a go at making change in your life, where you have so much more freedom, so much more choice, and so much more time. All right, enough from me and my TED Talk. Let's get cracking with today's episode. So the other day I received this email. Dear Canna, I wanted to reach out and thank you. Thank you for the part you have played and are continuing to play in our journey. 5 years ago, my husband and I embarked on a financial literacy journey to educate ourselves on money. And we ended up with so much more out of this journey than we expected. Our idea of reading a few books to help us with a simple household budget has set us up on a wealth building trajectory beyond our wildest imaginations. Not only did we not understand what we were capable of, but we actually had no idea of the opportunities the world had to offer. We are two sensible non-spenders who couldn't be more vanilla or ordinary if we tried. But now we are a mortgage-free couple with a 7-figure investment portfolio with tax-effective strategies in place and a business-class retirement plan mapped out. We'd like to thank you for your contribution to financial literacy, because without the $1,000 project, I would have never bought my first bundle of shares. Your endorsement of Peter Thornhill gave us the confidence to debt recycle and pay off our mortgage faster. Mindful Money, that is my book, showed us how to look forward and play the long-term game. I hope the writing of your next book is going well. I'm really excited to read it. Thank you again for your time, effort, and energy, educating the world and helping us learn and grow. Kind regards, Monica. When I read this email, I had to read it about 6 or 7 times because I was so taken aback by what Monica had achieved and the change that she'd made and how she had just taken complete ownership to step out of her perhaps safe and simple world and to actually make a really positive change where it was even potentially a little bit frightening what was on the other side of change. So I am thrilled and honored to be able to invite Monica on today's episode to share with us her stories as to how her and her husband have made this change in her life and actually, as a young family, built a 7-figure investment portfolio and created a business class retirement plan. Monica, thank you so much for coming on to today's episode. First of all, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. It's my day off. I'm having an amazing day. All the kids are at school.
I have to say, as a mother, a working mother as well, it's so nice to have the house to yourself.
Oh, it's very quiet. It's just me and the cat.
And no mess. And, for me, there's no mess when my kids are home. So I am actually today in a similar boat to you and working from home, and the kids are all at school, which is really nice. Now, thank you so much for reaching out to me and sharing with me your story. I've been creating all this content for 10 years now, and I make videos and podcasts and content on Instagram and TikTok, and I hope that it makes change and has a positive impact. So when I read emails like yours, it gives me the faith and hope to keep going with what I'm doing. So thank you so much for doing that. I want to break down your story and pick your brain and really go into the nitty gritty of how you got started, what you did, and of course, what does the future hold for you. So can we go back, I guess, to the basics and where you started? What initially inspired you and your husband to start your financial literacy journey, and what were some of the first things that you actually did?
Well, I was a young mum. So we were a couple with one child, and I found myself a stay-at-home mum and really responsible for everything. And no one teaches you how to do that. No one teaches you how to be a mum. There's no handbook. But then no one also teaches you how to run a household and how to take care of the finances. And as much as I felt like I wasn't doing anything wrong, we were just not doing a lot right. And I think that's where I came a little bit unstuck. We were savers, we were non-spenders, we were very frugal and very humble. And we both came from really humble beginnings. But when I realised I picked up my first little finance book about budgets, I realised that there was a big hole missing that I just wasn't doing.
So would you say that, you had something in your gut told you that what you were doing was fine, but there was just something far more efficient or much better to actually make a bigger impact in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I went from being a very independent woman and I was bringing in my own income to being a stay-at-home mum and depending on somebody else to take care of me. And I just wanted to make sure that I was doing the best I could to make sure that our dollar was stretching as far as it could. I knew that I would be a stay-at-home mum for a really long time, but we've had 3 kids and I haven't returned back to full-time work. So I wanted to make sure that if I was going to be a stay-at-home mum, that I was making his income work the best for our family.
And so what were some of the first steps? Like you mentioned, you started to read about budgeting. That's where you began. What was it that you read?
I read Barefoot Investor, which was great. It taught me about all the buckets and it sort of opened my eyes to my superannuation, which was a little bit embarrassing to admit is I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how much was in it. And when I found it, it was invested in cash and it had just been chewed away. All my fees had chewed it away over the years that I'd neglected it. So we opened our eyes to what we were missing out on. I looked at my mortgage and I was like, we need to pay this down. So I started being quite enlightened to what steps I needed to start taking.
Yeah. And what would you say that were some of the initial challenges that you faced? Did you ever think, oh gosh, this is overwhelming, or this is actually creating more anxiety? Were there any sort of blocks that you experienced when you first had a little bit of a sniff at where you stood financially?
The progress was incredibly slow. And I guess we know with all the compounding calculators, you watch at the very beginning and nothing happens. There's no traction there. And when we were at the very beginning, it would have been easy to throw in the towel and go, budgets don't work, budgets are silly, budget's a dirty word. So right at the beginning, we could have thrown in the towel and just kept doing our non-spending kind of ways. But as we saw the results of the budget and that giving each dollar a purpose was incredibly valuable.
I think it's so important to keep your eye regularly on your money, particularly around budgeting, because then you can actually see the physical transformation and feel it as well. Go, oh, hang on, this is working. Okay, wow, we didn't run out of money before the end of payday. Or wow, we actually, managed to pay off the credit card finally. It's so important to regularly review your budgeting cash flow so that you can actually, because that's what, I always say, progress fuels success. When you can see the progress, even if it's a tiny progress, it drives you to keep going and stay on track and stay focused. Were there any sort of things that you sort of hit with, I guess, around financial literacy where you went, oh, this is complicated, or this is too hard to understand, or I can't do this, and just maybe think, okay, well, pass the buck to someone else?
Oh, absolutely. And that, if I read one book and I didn't understand it, I just read the next book. And when I didn't understand that book, I went to a website and I Googled it. And then I watched some YouTube clips and I listened to a podcast. I must have read every book on finance in my local library. And I've listened to every podcast I can listen to. But I think it was really important that I listened to things and read things that I didn't agree with, because that's also helped me form my opinion on what I like and what I don't like.
How would you say that your mindset then plays in that determination and commitment to improving your financial situation?
I think your mindset is pre-programmed by sort of the generation before you that tell you how you should be conducting yourself as a young adult. A mortgage is a fact of life. You need to have it for 30 years. And investments are for rich people, and that's just property. And if you own shares, it's almost like going to the casino and putting all of your money on Red 21. So my husband and I were both sort of programmed to think that these things were out of our reach. But once I started my education process, my mindset changed, knowing that I had educated myself and I didn't agree with those opinions anymore.
How liberating.
It is very liberating. And I'm not dissing myself, Canna, but I didn't do well in high school. I just pulled out an old high school report and I got a D in maths. It's not something I'm proud of, but I had to show my son, and I wanted him to know that I have flourished despite my education. And I think that's one of Peter Thornhill's beautiful quotes that he says, like, I absolutely have found something that I'm good at, and it's got nothing to do with finishing high school.
Oh, absolutely. And, I struggled at school and at university, and, I hated it. And I always felt, I did the basic elementary maths in the sandpit. And, here I am, working in finance, 22 years later, and absolutely, love it. But, it's got nothing to do with how you did at school. It's, how you apply yourself in the school of life. So I want to just hone in on quickly on the actual resources that you read. So you mentioned Barefoot Investor. You touched in your email about the $1,000 project and Mindful Money. How did those books sort of take you step by step through the way? Where do they fit in the I guess, the jigsaw of you improving your financial well-being piece by piece?
I guess Barefoot was great because it started my education journey, and I had read lots about investing in the share market, but nothing really gave me the confidence like the $1,000 project did. When I read it, $1,000 felt very achievable for me. And up until that point, all the numbers seemed too inflamed, and it was too pie in the sky. But $1,000, I was like, I can do that. I can hustle $1,000. And I guess the $1,000 project really built my hustle muscle. And that's where my first parcel of shares were purchased after my first $1,000.
Can I ask you quickly, how did you come up with your first $1,000?
Oh my gosh, you're going to laugh. I sold muffins.
Really?
I did.
I think that's amazing. Tell me more.
I started a small business from home. I just identified that at school, parents didn't have enough time to bake for their children. And I was a school mum, and I was watching these kids come to school with packaged product. And that is absolutely fine because fed is best. But I was always told that home baked is best. And my grandmother baked and my mother baked, and I'm a baker. So I started a small business where I baked lunchbox treats and raw treats, sugar-free treats, muffins and slices, and this was money we didn't need in our budget. This was in addition to. So the purpose I gave it was to buy the shares, and that's the first bundle of shares was with AFIC, and I remember it quite vividly. I bought my first $1,000, and no one ran over and gave me a gold star for it. I was so excited with myself. I hustled very hard with those muffins to buy my first $1,000 worth of shares.
Snacking is my love language. I'm the person that will buy a muffin or a cookie or a slice for myself and for my kids, and then for everyone. So I would give you 500 golden stars for that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And so, where did you say you invested? Not that obviously this is product advice for the listeners, but out of interest, where did you invest that first $1,000?
Yeah, my first $1,000 was with AFIC, and we have done a lot of listed investment companies since then. And I think I've fallen in love with them more since Peter. We do a lot of Australian industrial shares, lots of listed investment companies, obviously not product advice. My husband works in mining, so we do have a little bit more of a sway to a bit of mining. And
Okay. Well, look, your investment strategy obviously is very similar to mine. I'm a huge fan of, in Australian industrial shares and that long-term, buy and hold and reinvest wherever possible. So we'll come back to your investment strategy in just a little bit. But I just want to go back to the journey, I guess. You mentioned in your email that you guys are non-spenders, which, also known as savers. And one of my biggest bugbears with financial literacy is that there's so much focus on saving and budgeting and paying off debt, which is great, but it is only one side of the coin. And really, to get yourself over the other side of the rainbow is to invest in an educated manner, understanding obviously all the costs and all the risks involved. But, that's a big transition to go from someone who's always been about saving money to investing money. That for a lot of people, it's terrifying. And, there's risk involved and, what if, the what if thoughts running through your mind. How did you find that transition going from a non-spender or saver, as you called yourself, to becoming investors and serious investors? You're investing, you've built a diversified share portfolio. You're a sophisticated investor by technical definition.
We only invested what we didn't need. So when I had my small business on the side, or when I've started a very small job, we only invested the money that we didn't need in our budget. And I think that felt comfortable for us until we'd paid off our mortgage, and we realised that if we were happy paying that $3,000 or $4,000 on our mortgage, and now we don't need to do that anymore, we're happy to put that money into investing. So we just gave the money a different purpose. Once the mortgage had been paid off, we went, okay, the next purpose is building our share portfolio. But because it is linked to an end goal for us, we found that transition very easy.
So many people I speak with that, ask me for advice or I ask me for guidance. I say to them, okay, no problem, sit down, let's have a chat. I'm like, what are your goals? And they're like, oh, what do you mean goals? I'm like, well, what are your goals? And I'll listen to their story. I'm like, the one thing they're missing, or one of the most important things they're missing, is a simple financial goal to work on, because it gives you purpose, it gives you direction, it gives you clarity, it gives you that pinpoint that you can then compare and see that growth and development and that progress, that I bang on about so much. So, so the power of just one financial goal can be really transformational. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And we're very goal oriented. I spoke to my husband on the phone last night and I said to him, we've just reached this milestone goal. I don't really know what we're going to do next. I don't understand how we're going to stay motivated. What's our next thing that we can work towards so we can keep being excited? And he's like, we just have to keep tracking the percentages, Monica, and keep making sure that those percentages keep going up. We'll be motivated with that.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? It's like, the best analogy I can give people who still quite can't grasp the concept of what a goal is like, it's when you're, for example, doing a fitness goal and you're like, okay, my goal is to be able to run 15 kilometers. And, first week you manage to get to 1 kilometer. And then next week you manage to get to 1.3 kilometers. If you're actually tracking how far you're running or how fast you're running, and you can see that improvement, that is the dopamine hit that makes you go back. And that gives you that thirst to see if you can beat that again. Like it's almost gamifying your finances. Now, you talked about, you guys have built a diversified share portfolio. If you were to break down the risk involved, you are technically a high growth or a growth, risk profile investor. And obviously that means, you're comfortable with the short to medium term levels of volatility and risk, and you understand obviously all the expenses involved. Buying shares and investing in shares is, there has a lot of risk, and there's a huge amount of volatility, particularly in the short term, even the short to medium term. Surely you would have experienced pullbacks and drops and corrections in your portfolio, because that's normal and that is very natural. How did that feel when that happened? I'm obviously going to assume that did happen, because I'd be shocked if it hadn't happened. And what allowed you to go, hang on, don't panic, don't freak out, we don't need to stop. We need to hold on tight, follow the advice, maybe make a few changes here and there. Like, how did you cope with that as new investors?
I was so excited. And so was my husband. All of our favourite shares were on sale. And I must admit, we went on a spending spree.
So you actually bought while the market was down?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant.
When COVID hit, it was like my favourite shoes were on sale. I was beyond excited.
That is so cool.
This was right in the middle of our debt recycling strategy, and I know we'll get to that in a little bit, but we had already had such a big plan to pay off our mortgage. And when we saw that everything was cheap, we bought up really big.
Yeah. You know what? That is such a testament to your level of education, because, new investors, naturally, it's the unknown. It's overwhelming, it's frightening, it's scary, it's exhilarating. There's this like whirlwind of emotions involved, some of which completely contradict each other, and that you can literally, your attitude and mood can change, with the flick of a switch. to, as new investors, to have that like approach where you went, okay, the market's come back a lot. There's our portfolio is down, but we are able to buy the same investments that we already hold now, but at a greater discount, and be able to buy those passive income streams at a greater discount. Let's buy more. That is something that would normally come from an experienced investor or an investor that actually is really well informed. So, I mean, that just shows me how switched on you guys are with managing your money and making those very important decisions that sometimes are quite time sensitive as well. So, I mean, I'm in awe of what you guys have achieved, and in particular your mindset. And so much of financial growth and development is mindset. But I'll keep going with these questions, so it's just so important. Now, a lot of people think debt is bad, and I agree. Credit card debt, horrendous. Personal loans, really bad. Car loans, particularly if it's not used for tax deduction and business purpose, it's dead money. But debt recycling, and I say this as a financial planner with 20-something years of experience, is one of the ways to really accelerate your wealth creation journey. But it obviously is a high-risk strategy. It's not for everyone. How did you get to the point where you're like, okay, we are now building up the share portfolio. We need to learn about what this debt recycling strategy is. And how did you know it was the right time for you to apply this strategy in your life?
I think I had educated myself enough, and my husband felt confident enough in the strategy that we had thought out and we'd mulled over for a really long time. We'd done a few spreadsheets, crunched a few numbers, and we had worked out that even in the worst case scenario, we would be okay. We also had the confidence of knowing that we didn't have a car loan, we don't have credit cards, we've never had any shop debt, we don't have personal loans, we don't have any of that debt. We've had all three of our children, and they're beautiful and healthy and amazing. And my husband's job was quite secure. We felt very confident taking the next step because we felt like we had been investing for long enough that we had that information under our belt. All of our insurances were in check. And this wasn't our first step in our wealth building journey. This was step 50. We'd done all the right things leading up to this point, and we felt confident in that strategy.
Yeah. And look, I have to say, there's in Mindful Money, I talk about debt recycling in a lot of detail. I talk about, I think I share 7 things you can do to help make that debt recycling strategy as robust and bulletproof as possible. And, it sounds like you guys have probably implemented some of those ideas to help make sure it's, what you've done is safe and sound. So, again, just incredible as to what you've achieved. Can we now move on to your business class retirement plan? Because this sounds really sexy. Like, what made you sort of then start thinking, I guess beyond investing and think, okay, we now need to revisit super? And I know you touched on, there was a bit of shame when you looked at your superannuation and realized there wasn't much and that it was been sitting in cash and been eroding away with fees. Where did the superannuation piece come into the whole journey or adventure?
Isn't super really exciting? I'm completely nerded out by it. And we would be so fun at at a dinner table, wouldn't we? Sitting there equation. Once we'd finished paying off our mortgage, we knew that we needed to start accelerating our wealth. We knew that salary sacrificing was very tax efficient for my husband, and it was a really good strategy for myself as well. So we've started salary sacrificing, but also we go back and top up our super with our unused caps. So this year, before the tax brackets changed, we went and topped up my husband so he could get a nice tax return. And it is a beautiful way in the future for us to sort of have the 4 buckets for our wealth building.
And were there any particular resources you used to help figure out your superannuation? Because I feel a lot of people don't even know where to start with superannuation unless they're seeing a financial planner. Did you know to access a particular risk profile? Did you go to a comparison website, for example, to look at your superannuation and all the different types of accounts?
Absolutely. And we did all of those things. I think we've gone online and compared a lot of different products. We don't have enough super to do a self-managed super fund at the moment. It wouldn't be cost effective for us. So we have just chosen something that's within our risk profile. And yeah, the online calculators have been very useful.
I have been putting money into my superannuation for a long time, and I also was able to get save, I think, about $160,000 in tax by using superannuation through a small business rollover relief, which I qualified for. And even as someone who's got enough money in superannuation to justify the expense of a self-managed super fund, I would never, ever use a self-managed super fund. I would never set one up. They sound great, and for some people, they definitely have their place, and they're very, very powerful. But as someone who's a mother like yourself and of busy kids, I don't have the time. I don't have to manage the additional administration. All the compliance risk falls on your shoulders. So, I think a lot of people get sold the sexiness and the sophistication of a self-managed super fund, but really, I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's unnecessary time, money, and energy. And again, all that risk falls on your own shoulders when, I pay such a competitive fee for my superannuation account. It's got the in-specie transfer service that a self-managed super fund would offer me anyway. And I don't ever need to worry about not lodging a tax return, something being lodged in time, and all the accounting. And it's just huge what the amount of work that goes in behind a self-managed super fund. So don't necessarily get caught into that trap that you necessarily need a self-managed super fund. That there's a lot of great superannuation products out there, I think, that do just as good, or if not even better, and a much more efficient use of your resources.
I just don't have time for that. I'm more of a set and forget kind of girl. Like, automate my direct debits that go over to it. I'm watching it build. We salary sacrifice. Job's done.
100%. So everyone who's listening to this right now thinks, oh my goodness, like, wow, like, listening to you, you're a mother of 3, your husband works, obviously long hours, and it sounds like a bit like me doing a bit of solo parenting, juggling the load and the responsibilities, and everyone's like growing and evolving needs all the time. What would you say to someone in a similar situation? Where would you recommend they get started?
Don't bite off lots and lots at the same time. Start with a very small objective. Write everything down and just choose one small thing and bite it off today. And just go, this week, I'm looking at my insurances. And you only focus on one thing this week. And next week, I'm going to look at my electricity account. And the week after that, I'm going to go and have a look at my superannuation. I think compartmentalizing it and sort of breaking it down into very small bites. Otherwise, it's incredibly overwhelming. And it's very disheartening when you look at the big picture and you think, there's so much work to do, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if you chunk it and you scaffold it and you just do a very small amount, you will get through it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And just to ask you a quick question, before I pressed record with this interview, we had a quick chat and you talked about, you've never really shared this story with anyone. And, it previously, it was kind of like, crass or boastful or shameful to talk about wanting financial freedom or wanting, call it wealth, as such. How does that feel now that you've just shared your story? Because, so I feel like it's with money, you can talk about it in a crass way, you can talk about it in a boastful way, but the conversation you and I have just had is about talking about it in a efficient manner, about empowering people, motivating people, your inspiring story. How does it feel now that you just shared your incredible accomplishments?
I think it's a beautiful thing to share with someone that's equally as excited for you. I think the audience that you're talking to about finance is really important. I think sitting at the wrong table and having a chat about finance is not the right time and place. And I think it's just better to say nothing at all than to put your foot in your mouth. So my husband and I have always been incredibly humble. I've got some very good advice from a wise friend that told me never to wear my money on my sleeve or my arm or in my car. Like, we could afford to go buy a beautiful Range Rover, but we drive really humble cars. Don't have fancy things. We go on beautiful holidays because that's something that we value and appreciate. And it is lovely to share, but the audience doesn't always want to hear your story. So I think I've just always erred on the side of caution and just not told it.
Yeah. Well, you opening up and bravely and humbly sharing your story. And your story has not been one of just luck. It's been one of hard work and commitment and dedication and really going down a journey of education. So, I think you should feel incredibly proud. And, as we began this episode, I spoke about the importance of change and showing people what change looks like so that they can see that they are worthy and capable of similar change. As we work towards the end of this episode, what would you say change has looked like and felt like to you and your family?
I think it's given us lots and lots of options moving forward, where our options were quite limited before, but now we can comfortably give all of our children braces. And they can all go to a private high school. We can buy them their first car and pay for their further education if they want to go to university. We can afford to maybe help them with a home deposit. We've set them all up with Vanguard managed funds at the moment to get them started on their investing journeys. So I think that change has helped create intergenerational education and wealth. So
I would say change has been very positive and feels great.
It does look and feel great. And the future is incredibly bright. And we're happy for any market corrections that come our way because we've educated and we understand that if it dips, it's going to resurrect. And we feel comfortable watching the dip and knowing that it will come back up again.
All right. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, what does your future look like? Looking ahead, what are, your portfolio is, as you mentioned, has hit the 7-figure mark, which is outstanding. What have you got your eyes on, in your journey? Because obviously it's not like you hit the 7-figure and then just shut up shop necessarily, unless of course you want to, but you sound like someone who's very motivated, very ambitious. What are the next, exciting things that you are looking to sink your teeth into with this journey?
Oh yeah, we've sort of hit this plateau, this wall. We're going, well, we've developed 4 pots that we're working on toward our retirement. We've got 2 superannuation accounts and 2 external portfolios. And between those 4 pots, we're going to create a beautiful retirement fund for ourselves. We're also going to have a drawdown strategy that leaves a beautiful legacy behind for our children. So we're not drawing down and eating out the capital. We're only drawing down 3 or 4%. So what you're still left behind is still generating income for the kids. I really hope that I can do some more education on tax efficient strategies going forward and making sure that I set up for the children in a legacy way that protects them from divorce, because, it's a fact of life.
Yep.
Making sure that the kids are comfortable as adults, but also my grandchildren, I want to be able to set up education funds for them and make sure that they have something left from their grandparents too.
What beautiful and brilliant ideas and goals and dreams you've got. And I have no doubt that they are well within your reach and that you're already significantly and substantially on the way to achieving those. So I can't help myself but feel incredibly inspired and motivated by your energy and your, drive and tenacity. So, thank you so much. And, as we end up right now, what is the last piece of advice you would give to someone, listening to this right now who hasn't gotten started? What would you say to them?
Investing is not for rich people. It's for everyday people. I'm a regular person. I'm a mum of 3. I've educated myself and I've done it. And I know that everyone can do it too. And starting small is okay. You start small and the snowball gains traction and it's very exciting and very motivating. Communicating with your partner is very important and making sure you're on the same page. Working as a team is definitely how we've got to where we are. My husband and I are an amazing team. And when I'm feeling overwhelmed or I've got questions, he backs me up. And where he doesn't really quite know, then I back him up. So we are regular people. There couldn't be any more vanilla than we are.
Well, I think you need to stop calling yourself vanilla. I think you may feel ordinary, but I think you are extraordinary.
Thank you, Canna.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to today's episode on Sugar Mama's Fire Play. I mean, what an incredible story. If this doesn't inspire you to start making change in your life, I don't know what else to do with you. So please make sure you have a think about, this story, what you've heard, and all the little bits of tips, insights, and hacks that we had just been shared with you. Monica, thank you so much for coming on today's episode. I can't thank you enough. I will make sure I link in the podcast notes the books that you mentioned, obviously Peter Thornhill's Motivated Money, the $1,000 Project, Mindful Money, and of course Barefoot Investor's book by Scott. So thank you again for coming on, and I'm incredibly grateful.
Thank you, Kanna. It was really lovely to meet you.
Thank you.